For decades, the Middle East has seen conflicts unfold through proxies and indirect engagements. The idea of a direct, kinetic confrontation between Israel and Iran was always a possibility, but now that long-anticipated scenario has moved from speculation to reality. In the pre-dawn hours of June 13, 2025, direct warfare between the two regional powers escalated. The regional tensions that simmered for months have now erupted into open strikes between Israel and Iran themselves. On June 13, 2025, Israel initiated an unprovoked military operation dubbed Operation Rising Lion, launching what Iranian officials termed as savage aggression and a grave mistake. This operation was not a limited engagement. It involved a massive sequence of airstrikes, sabotage, and targeted assassination across Iran. Israeli objectives initially focused on Iran's nuclear facilities, military leadership, and ballistic missile arsenal. However, with the latest strikes on Iran, the objectives now appear to have broadened far beyond the initial stated focus on nuclear facilities and their supporting infrastructure. The targets have expanded to include ballistic missile launchers, crippling Iran's ability to respond, as well as Iran's oil and gas infrastructure. Israeli defense sources indicated that it had achieved approximately 200 successful hits, targeting numerous sites related to Iran's nuclear program, missile launch capabilities, and command and control infrastructure. The headquarters of the Revolutionary Guard Corps was also reported to be ablaze. Beyond airstrikes, Israeli intelligence elements, allegedly linked to Mossad, operated throughout the country, particularly in urban areas. These operations involve sabotage and targeted assassinations of air defense systems, ballistic missiles, and launch equipment. The human cost for Iran was immediate, with reports of death of a number of children and women, innocent civilians, military commanders, and nuclear scientists. Crucially, Israel claims to have eliminated a large portion of Iran's top military leadership, if not most or even all of the nation's most important military decision-makers. Among those confirmed dead were Hussein Salami, the leader of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and Mohammad Bagheri, the chief of staff of the Iranian military. Iran's chief negotiator for a new nuclear deal with the United States was also reportedly killed. The recent Israeli assault on Iran's nuclear facilities and the assassinations of its leadership were not sudden actions. They were the culmination of a carefully paved path, significantly influenced by dramatic geopolitical shifts in the Middle East. First, Iran's most formidable proxy, Hezbollah in Lebanon, its so-called insurance policy against direct Israeli or American attacks was severely weakened. Through a series of major Israeli surprise attacks between September and November 2024, Hezbollah's communications were destroyed, its top leadership, including Hassan Nasrallah, was eliminated, and over 80% of its missile arsenal was wiped out. This crippling of Hezbollah directly contributed to the rapid collapse of the Assad regime in Syria at the end of 2024. With Assad gone, Iran lost its invaluable land bridge for resupplying Hezbollah and its only truly aligned UN member state in the region. Seizing this opportunity, Israeli ground forces advanced into the UN buffer zone in the Golan Heights, including the Syrian side of Mount Hermon. This strategic capture eliminated a significant blind spot in Israel's northern radar defenses, and gave Israel the ability to monitor Hezbollah's activities and even position artillery within striking range of Damascus. Crucially, in the 8 days following Assad's collapse, the Israeli Air Force launched an enormous bombing campaign across Syria, carrying out some 600 strikes. This operation systematically destroyed nearly all of Syria's radar systems and 90% of its surface-to-air missiles, effectively turning Syrian airspace into a sterile defense zone. This neutralization of Syrian air defenses effectively kicked down the gate that had protected Iran for decades. It removed the major obstacle that prevented Israeli F-35s and aerial refueling tankers from flying unimpeded through Syrian airspace to reach and sustain direct attacks on Iranian territory. With Hezbollah crippled and Syria neutralized, Iran was left isolated and exposed, making the direct assaults on its nuclear program and leadership dramatically more feasible. Iran's response was swift. Iranian officials stated they would not remain silent in the face of this crime, promising a legitimate and powerful response. In retaliation, Iran launched multiple rounds of ballistic missiles and kamikaze drones towards Israel, initiating Operation True Promise 3. These Iranian retaliatory strikes resulted in significant impacts and casualties in Israel. While Israel's air defense systems intercepted many projectiles, a small number evaded them to strike residential areas, leading some to describe relatively little damage. A modern residential building in central Tel Aviv sustained serious damage, and fires broke out in multiple apartments. Overall, 18 Israelis were killed and over 435 were injured. 34 people were reported missing. These Iranian actions were a direct response to Israel's unprecedented and unprovoked attacks on Iran, which commenced early on June 13th. Israel's strikes involved approximately 200 fighter jets targeting about 100 sites across Iran. These included Iran's nuclear facilities, military leadership, and ballistic missile infrastructure. The Isfahan Nuclear Technology Research Center was also hit, damaging uranium metal production facilities and infrastructure for reconversion of enriched uranium. Other targets included 6 military bases, 2 secure command posts, residential units for Iranian officials, the headquarters of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, and Iran's air defense systems, including the S-300 radar. Notably, the Natanz nuclear facility suffered severe damage, with its pilot fuel enrichment plant and advanced centrifuges reportedly destroyed, and additional damage to electrical infrastructure and support buildings. Israel also struck 2 fuel depots, Iran's defense ministry building, causing minor damage, and the South Pars gas field. These Israeli strikes led to 78 people killed and over 320 injured in Iran, with the overwhelming majority of victims identified as civilians. Among the dead were several high-ranking members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, including Commander Hossein Salami, Chief of Staff Mohammad Bagheri, his deputy Gholam Ali Rashid, Senior Advisor to the Supreme Leader Ali Shamkhani, and Quds Force Commander Esmail Khani, along with 6 nuclear scientists. A critical question arising from these direct exchanges is Iran's defensive capability against Israeli air attacks and its capacity for sustained retaliation. Defense analysts assess Iran as vulnerable, though not entirely weak. A key vulnerability lies in Iran's air defense systems. The S-300 radar system, Iran's top defense acquisition priority for the past 15 years, was reportedly destroyed by Israel following previous Iranian attacks in April and October of the previous year, rendering the system ineffective. Furthermore, Iran's homegrown air defense systems such as Bavar, often reverse-engineered from Western and Russian models, have proven ineffective or easily countered. With its traditional allies significantly weakened, Iran now faces the prospect of confronting Israel largely on its own. This raises immediate questions about Iran's remaining options, particularly if Israel maintains its aggressive posture. The United States, for its part, has issued explicit warnings to Tehran. Washington has stated that if Iran targets U.S. assets, the U.S. will respond. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has formally requested direct U.S. involvement and assistance in fighting Iran. However, so far, the United States is avoiding further escalating the conflict by becoming directly involved. If American assets are indeed targeted, Washington's response could be overwhelming, potentially involving advanced military assets like the GBU-57, a 5,000-pound bunker buster designed to destroy Iran's most hardened nuclear facilities. While Israel's extensive bombing campaign since October 2023 has significantly weakened Iran's axis of resistance network, challenging the perceived strength of Iran's proxies, the critical role of the United States in supporting Israel's defense and deterring wider regional escalation remains evident. Indeed, it has been reported that some of the recent retaliatory missiles Iran fired towards Israel were intercepted by the US, underscoring the continued reliance on allied support in such confrontations. The current situation indicates a profound security shift, actively directed by Israel. The long-standing issues of the Arab-Israeli and Palestinian-Israeli conflicts, often set aside, have now been subsumed and transformed into a direct regional struggle between Israel and Iran. Furthermore, following Israel's bombardments of Iran on June 13th, some reports have suggested a secret shipment of hundreds of missiles from the USA to Israel earlier in the week. Predicting the conclusion of this conflict remains difficult. However, one certainty is that it will not be ending quickly. As missiles continue to fly between Tehran and Tel Aviv, this conflict represents far more than a bilateral dispute. Israel has successfully dismantled Iran's decades-old proxy network and forced a direct confrontation that fundamentally reshapes Middle Eastern power dynamics. Whether this gamble strengthens Israel's position or draws it into a prolonged conflict it cannot win alone will determine the region's trajectory for years to come. What began as proxy warfare has evolved into something far more dangerous and far less predictable. This conflict is still ongoing and rapidly evolving. Given the fluid nature of this situation, there is a high probability that by the time this video is published, much of the information presented will be outdated as new developments unfold. If you enjoyed the video, please consider supporting the channel by subscribing.